Welcome to Is This a Thing's virtual Fillet of Solo show. Is This a Thing started in 2014, and we look forward to getting back to live in-person shows as soon as we can. The format for our show is always the same. We ask storytellers to share true and personal stories from their lives. We welcome new and first-time storytellers, as well as experienced and veteran storytellers to our show. And for this virtual show, we have 5 tellers for you that reflect this, some first timers and some long timers. And we at Is This a Thing are absolutely honored to be a part of Fillet of Solo in the amazing Lifeline Theater. And we are also ecstatic that you have tuned in to watch our show. I now have the pleasure of introducing our first storyteller of the evening. Our first storyteller is also a founding producer of Is This a Thing? From Chicago, she is not new to the virtual storytelling format. She also produces virtual shows for Chicago nonprofits through her Big Shoulders Stories initiative. And after she tells her story, she will be our host for the remainder of this show. So I am pleased to introduce and turn the Zoom over to Susie Kahn Weinberg.
Hey, everybody. Jake, thank you so much. Okay, here goes. Our first foster dog, Kayak, arrived on March 24th in the year of our pandemic. I've never had a dog before. I've barely had a pet before, with the exception of George the tortoise years ago, and that did not end well. But dog fostering would be temporary, a lark, a new identity to try on, that of dog people. Having a dog in the house would be the perfect distraction and diversion for my family at the start of the lockdown. The certainty of a schedule and meeting the needs of this needy furry creature to combat the uncertainty of practically everything else. The commitment for fostering coincided with what I thought would be the duration of our stay-at-home order. 2 weeks turned into 4 weeks, then 4 became 8. While I knew our fostering days were numbered as Kayak would one day be adopted, the pandemic days stretched on endlessly. Those 2 months with Kayak, an 80-pound, lumpy, drooly, middle-aged dog from the streets, did the trick. Boy, was I distracted. The evening he was dropped off at our house with a huge crate and 10 pounds of dog food, the kind volunteer who brought him made the mistake of saying, "Just make him feel safe and cared for. You can't spoil him. Enjoy." Well, you can spoil a dog. My nurturing, empathic instincts were activated. I covered the good couch so he could make it his home base, big enough for him and any one of us to curl up with him between walks. I made him scrambled eggs, turkey burgers, and I let him lick our plates clean after dinner. He was so overfed, he had to poop many, many times a day. We didn't think that was a problem because the 5 of us at home were so eager to have a reason to get out of the house. He might have gone on 8 to 10 walks on any given day. Kayak, affectionately nicknamed Kooky Boy, was a super friendly, loving beast that we controlled until we couldn't anymore. When he tried to eat the neighbor's dog, well, not really, but pretty sure that's how she would describe it, we knew it was time for Kayak to find a better suited home. We were in over our heads. The jig was up. We are not dog people. We have no idea what we're doing. The day he got picked up by a lovely couple who were ready to take on the lovable 80-pound monster, my dog diversion dream came to a close. And meanwhile, the pandemic nightmare raged on. I missed having Kayak around, a lot more than I anticipated. I developed a pandemic habit of indulging in excessive pup scrolling, the antithesis of doom scrolling. I was perpetually on the lookout for our next foster dog. In July, we got Chrissy. She was a beautiful 2-year-old shy thing from Texas. Everything about the city scared her. The streets, the cars, sirens, dogs, sidewalks, squirrels. Chrissy and I spent a lot of time together out on our back deck. While she wasn't into walks beyond the end of the block, she did enjoy yoga. Her downward dog was enviable. After 6 weeks, the last 2 filled with uncontrollable, excessive jumping and barking, it was time for Chrissy to find her forever family. I get the occasional good report and photos, she still has that "we are not amused" look on her face that I did grow to love. So in October, we got foster number 3, a very sweet 1-year-old pup, the best of the bunch. Never barks and just wants to follow you around like the puppy dog that he is. His amber eyes could melt chocolate. Those who know me well have been appropriately surprised at my new foster dog hobby. Fortunate to experience the pandemic from the safety of the sidelines at home, it's been a rush to let all the old shit go that I used to concern myself with, like having a clean house and spending time with human friends. Because fostering is temporary, it has that what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas kind of feeling, a fling of sorts. And each time I have fallen in love, aware that it wasn't a forever thing, only that it might sting a little to say goodbye and would make for some great Instagrammable memories. I was very clear from the start. I told my kids, fostering is awesome. Keeping for ourselves was an impossibility. All I had to do was remind them of what happened to George the tortoise 11 years ago. It crawled into our front yard and was picked up by the tuck pointer who was doing some work on our bricks. He left this prehistoric creature in a box on our steps with a note, "Found your turtle." It was my son's 7th birthday, and he thought it was a present for him, and he named him George. The rescued tortoise was now ours. Of course, I had to do all the work, but that just consists of daily romaine and tomato salads and the occasional terrarium cleaning. The kids had fun walking George outside and making epic obstacle courses. I think there is still a YouTube channel with the highlights. But as I said at the top, things did not end well with George. My constant reminder that I am not meant for pet ownership. George got sick and slowed down, even for an ancient tortoise. He was likely not going to make it much longer, but when the vet offered me the option to give him daily vitamin injections and put him under a heat lamp, I felt I had to try. The idea of using those tiny little needles kept me up all night. That first morning, my sweet daughter Molly was in the basement with George waiting for me. "Mommy, why is the glass so hot?" Oh shit. The timer never went off the heat lamp. I had quite inadvertently, I promise you, baked George. We both burst into tears. So you see, fostering was perfect for me. When we say goodbye to these dogs, it means we have done our job to help them get to their peak, healthy, happy, and alive, and on their way to a good home. What I can only describe as an outer body experience, on November 29th, in the year of our pandemic, we foster failed with dog number 3. That's the cute way of saying we adopted our dog, Minnow. We are now his forever home. I'm still processing how I got here. Up until spring 2020, Jeff and I had been giddily imagining our lives together in the empty nest very soon to come. Travel and extended stays in new cities around the world will be spontaneous at home and abroad. And now we have a puppy. Jeff did the math to point out that he anyway, will be pushing 70 and we will likely still have this dog. As the pandemic thankfully draws to a somewhat foreseeable close, every one of us is anxiously speculating what a new normal might look like. Yet planning ahead still feels like it can't really go beyond a few weeks at a time for now. And I have always been a planner. Well, now I know. For better or worse, whatever the future holds, absolutely no heat lamps, I assure you. But our future includes our dog. And that could make what's to come a little bit better after all. Thank you. Well, as I transition now to host mode, I want to take a moment to say that I'm so happy to be back with Fillet of Solo and to be introducing our great lineup. As Jake said, we have some storytellers who are new to Is This a Thing and to this amazing Chicago storytelling community. I'm excited to introduce our next storyteller, who hails from the Bay Area and now calls the neon lights of Las Vegas home. She has spun stories with the Moth Story Slam, as well as the Chicago nonprofit Contextos. She's a pup and plant mama who loves to spend her time painting and writing, biking and hiking, and howling at the moon. Coming into the spotlight is Nico Mendoza.
Thank you. This is Errant Etchings. I had always been drawn to the bedtime stories my parents told me, and to shows like Wishbone and The Reading Rainbow on PBS. But the first time I felt that clawing urge to master the skill for my own, I was in kindergarten. Another little girl named Jessica had already made friends with the lines, curves, and edges of the alphabet. She could read all on her own and was learning how to write the letters herself. I felt envy so green that I grew chloroplast and started photosynthesizing my own energy from the sun of that wanting. I wanted to be better at reading than Jessica was. I wanted to be able to immerse myself so deeply that nothing else in the Milky Way existed but those pages. I demanded my father teach me, and he finally relented in setting our first reading lesson at the library after school. It was like making an instant best friend, where you know the bond is strong and you know the bond is for life. We met, exchanging tentative glances with one another. She excitedly told me all she knew about moons. I was mesmerized by the way her mouth shape-shifted as she spoke simple words. The tunnel of a long U sound, the slight grimace of a long E, the soft pursing of a short O. We became fast friends, doing everything together and holding hands everywhere we went. On the playground during recess, in the cafeteria during lunch, secretly during class, under the desk and away from teachers' prying eyes. If Mrs. Peterson found out, we'd be separated for sure, because we clearly weren't focused on anything but each other. We'd make eye contact and grin, the need to keep the laughter inside of our bodies burning our cheeks. Knowing how close we were to being caught only heightened the hilarity exponentially. But even if caught, even when caught, we'd hold hands in detention still. In second grade, she had a growth spurt of body and of mind, and there was more and more of her to love. She introduced me to legends from bygone times, creatures from far-off lands accessed through wardrobes, to new words and ideas that shook me to the core to comprehend. My eyes dilated as I took deeper and deeper gulps of her, like an asthmatic desperate for oxygen who realized their inhaler just ran out mid-attack. Through middle school and high school, we were so inseparable that I absorbed her essence by osmosis. We snuck around in the library, we sat together at the back of the bus, we hung out at the park until the streetlights opened their sleepy eyes at dusk. We got popcorn fried chicken at spicy level 3 with avocado boba shakes before going home. She was the first one I sought solace and comfort from when my mom sat my brother and me down in a McDonald's booth to tell us she and my father were splitting up. She was sliding around in the back seat, giddy as I was with excitement when my dad took me for my first driving lesson. I started taking all that she had taught me and making it my own, penning tales and creating worlds of wonder that I could escape to with her at my side. There were some nights we swapped stories, talking through the night until we fell asleep sitting upright at our desks. There were other nights she shared my bed, the sheets a makeshift tent we camped in with flashlights to keep the lurking monsters at bay. We laid face to face, so close that when she closed her eyes, my lashes brushed her cheek, so close that when she sighed before succumbing to sleep, it was my lungs that deflated. We eventually went to the same university, took the same classes, lounged together on breaks in the shaded grass under trees so big they blocked the Las Vegas Strip from view. They brought us into an alternate reality, so close and yet so far from the neon skyline. Our imagined futures were woven together on a loom of our own creation. And in all the vast potential of what could come to pass, whether we be nomadic freelancers tending sheep in the south of France by day and drinking wine and writing articles by night, whether we owned a combination bookstore cafe that smelled of old paper and buttered croissants, or taught new generations of high schoolers a love of the English language as passionate as our own, I never envisioned a timeline in which our fingers did not interlace. Graduation day came, and it seemed as though the minute our caps hit the floor like confetti for giants, adulthood and all the responsibilities therein came, not just rapping gently on my chamber door like a naughty raven, but knocking like the goddamn police with a battering ram. Everything that had once been a definitive statement devolved into a question. What next? Where will we live? How will we afford anything? Did we rush into things? Maybe I should have been a doctor or a nurse like everybody in my family had wished for. The doubt in me projected a beam like the top of the Luxor casino, and I began to see our path as some fantastical acid trip whose rainbow high I was finally crashing down from. It was like a switch had been flipped within me, and I questioned if it was true love, if it had ever been love at all. As I fell deeper and deeper into despair, the ease and comfort that had been the foundation of our entire relationship fled the country with 3 fake IDs and its assets liquidated into offshore Swiss bank accounts. I didn't know how to connect with her anymore. My fingers were clumsy as they tried to intertwine with hers, an act that had once been as natural as blinking or doing a happy food dance or laughing at farts. What was worse still was I didn't know how to fix it or even how to tell her. And so I ran. And I hate running. It's my least favorite and honestly the worst ever form of cardio that exists. But I ran away from her as though every mile I put between us in distance would fill the cavernous void left in my chest cavity. Funnily enough, when I ghosted her, it was I who remained haunted by the cutting grayness of her absence that permeated my world like the mists of Avalon. I began to work a full-time job I took as a stepping stone, away from her and the itinerary of our future. I made new friends, took on new hobbies, and yet, everywhere I looked, I saw specters of her that could not be exorcised by neither the holiest of waters nor drowned by the most cursed of spirits. Who thought black licorice would make a good beverage? I would see stories she told me turn into movies. I'd be surprised by her lexicon rising from my own lips unbidden. I'd see others locked hands and rapturous with their own passions. If only I could snort a line of selective amnesia, then I could be a blue-haired wonder under eternal sunshine, my mind spotless and free. I resigned myself to a half-life. The unstable atom that was me decayed radioactively with each day, each hour, each minute spent away from her. I moved on as much as I could. Yet, when I closed my eyes at night, memories etched forever into the chalice of my soul reared their beautiful heads and roared. Years later, my life indeed looked vibrant and full to outsiders. I had a great job. I kept busy, cooking, traveling, and painting. I even got married and had the house with a big yard for my 2 furry kids. I could turn on a smile so big you could see it from behind me. I had almost forgotten what it felt like to bathe in the warmth of her embrace, to run my fingers through the silk of her hair. Almost. While speaking with my high school teacher, he invited me to join a writing group led by his favorite college professor, inspired to bring people together during quarantine. I hissed, a sharp inhale through my teeth, as my finger was sliced with a paper cut of her memory. I decided I would attend. Then I chickened out. Then the day was upon me. I joined the Zoom meeting with shaking hands and a heart fluttering so quickly I thought it stopped beating. Face to face with my first love once again, I had nowhere left to run, nor did I want to. I felt her strong fingers thread once again with my sweaty ones as we tapped on the keyboard together. I felt no malice or scorn, no passive aggressiveness or anger, only her love shining brightly upon me as I rekindled my romance with the written word. Maybe the future wouldn't be exactly as envisioned, but I knew that I'd never run from her again. Thank you.
Thank you, Nico. I, for one, am so glad you and your first love of words and stories and writing have been reunited. That is a love affair for the ages. Thanks for being here with us. Next up is a proud resident of Chicago since 2004. This is her 3rd story with Is This a Thing? When she's not telling stories, you can find her stressing out about the decision to start a project management consulting business during the pandemic, or trying to alleviate that stress with a pile of yarn and a crochet hook. Taking the unmuted mic right now is Carissa Letts.
Thank you so much, Susie. They say America runs on Duncan, but this girl runs on delicious, salty, carby, instant noodles. Instant noodles have been my first love, my forever love, my pandemic love. No offense to my husband. I first fell in love at age 6. My parents had dragged me along on the 5-hour round trip to the Asian grocery in Des Moines. At the time, it was probably the only Asian grocery in the entire state of Iowa. We would drive there every few months to buy 50-pound bags of jasmine rice, Chinese chorizo sausages by the dozen, and gallon jugs of soy sauce. It was in those dusty, funky-smelling aisles that I met my first instant noodle love. The lime green and white plastic wrapper depicted a steaming bowl, a glimpse of broth, half a hard-boiled egg obscured by a pair of chopsticks, delicately lifting curly, golden ramen noodles. Sapporo Ichiban, chicken flavor, cooks in 3 minutes. My working parents bought me that shit by the case. I don't know when Maruchan and Top Ramen became these ubiquitous items you can find in every grocery and convenience store in the US. But in mid-1980s, small town Iowa, ramen was truly a foreign object. In fact, once when I was sick and couldn't go to school, my mom dropped me off with my best friend's mom for the day, along with a packet of instant ramen for my lunch. Now, I happen to know from that best friend that her mom liked to serve the family minute rice topped with butter and salt. An idea which to this day makes my Asian American heart shrivel a tiny bit, because instant noodles are great, but instant rice is an abomination. Anyway, that nice white Iowan lady did not know what to do with a packet of instant ramen. So she made it the only way she knew how, draining away all of the water and mixing in the flavoring packet with a little butter and milk. Honestly, it wasn't bad. It was my completely inadvertent, accidental, somewhat bastardized introduction to the world of saucy ramen. We'll come back to that. As a latchkey kid, Sapporo Ichiban chicken ramen was my constant companion. It was what mom gave me when I was sick, and it was what I made for myself when I wasn't sick. It was not a treat. What I begged for and rarely got as a treat was Kraft blue box macaroni and cheese. It was what all the other kids were eating, and I wanted it. I coveted it. It wasn't until I went to college and was free to buy my own instant noodles that Kraft mac and cheese became a staple. I don't know if it was the passage of time or the relatively worldly population of my college town, but when I started grocery shopping for myself in the late 90s, there were so many kinds of instant ramen. Picante chicken, chili lime shrimp. The options were overwhelming. My first love had developed so many new, spicy facets that were waiting for me to explore. And my side piece, mac and cheese, was there for the taking. But there was an unexpected downside. The best mac and cheese requires both milk and butter, which were frankly luxury items on my college budget. And my love of instant noodles may also clue you in that I wasn't really prioritizing fresh food every week. So mac and cheese remained a special treat. Ramen was what kept me going the other 3 weeks of the month that I didn't have fresh, unspoiled milk and butter in the fridge. When I had a little disposable income, I'd splurge, not only on butter and milk, but also on sour cream to stir into my Lipton stroganoff flavor noodles and sauce. Did you know those packets also had recipes on the back for a balanced meal? As soon as I graduated college and got a real job with a real paycheck, those balanced meals became a regular menu item. The longer I was out of college, though, the more I succumbed to the idea that instant ramen was not helping my assimilation into white corporate culture. I'd stash a pack for a nostalgia emergency or a sick day, but it didn't feel like something I could indulge in often. And as my real job consumed more and more of my hours, All-American Kraft mac and cheese became the emergency fallback for nights when it was too late to order delivery. And that became a pretty regular occurrence. Enough so that when I eventually met and married my husband, who spoils me with multicultural homemade noodle dishes, at our wedding, my maid of honor would take advantage of her toast to thank my husband for saving me from a lifetime of eating mac and cheese out of the pan with the same wooden spoon I had used to prepare it. Thanks, Jen. Our wedding was in 2007, and for over a decade, I maintained only a casual flirtation with both instant ramen and Kraft mac and cheese. They were reminders from my single life, a guilty pleasure on rare occasions when my husband was out of town or working late, a quick dose of comfort when better options weren't at hand. Until this year. Until quarantine. And an unexpected layoff, and gross Trumpiness, and the same horrific racism I'd learned about too young as an Asian American girl in Iowa. Now global headline news for all of us to confront every day. This year coaxed those intermittent cravings to the surface and supercharged them. It was a few months into quarantine when my beloved Bon Appetit test kitchen videos became a well-deserved casualty of racial reckoning. Searching YouTube for alternative and more diverse content, I stumbled across a goldmine, a seemingly endless string of videos featuring Asian people, white people, Black people, all taking the spicy ramen challenge. My interest and appetite were piqued. The spicy ramen all these YouTubers were stuffing into their sweaty, pain-racked faces was a saucy version. No soup. A Korean ramyeon relative of my childhood illegitimate saucy ramen variant. I had to have it. I ordered a 5-pack from Amazon, waited for a day when my husband went to his office, and I settled in for my own personal spicy ramen challenge. The event was immortalized in my and my husband's iMessage thread. Ramen emoji, yum face emoji, short pause, head exploding emoji, fire emoji, fire emoji, fire emoji, red sweating face emoji, skull emoji. After I recovered, I searched for ways to consume the remaining 4 packs of the spicy ramen 5-pack without killing myself. YouTube, once again, helpfully interceded. Did you know that Koreans often enjoy melting American cheese into their spicy ramyeon? Or that they sometimes mix in a little milk along with a spicy sauce? Look it up. YouTube says it's true. It's my quarantine comfort food, my new and improved first love, better than ever. My Asian ramen with American cheese, cultural mashup, instant noodle happiness. And it is delicious. Thank you.
Oh, Carissa, my mouth was on fire the whole time. And now all I want are some noodles, but skip the fire part. And that mom adding milk to ramen, I'm pretty sure that in my family back in the day, we did the butter on the minute rice thing. I'll have to check, but for shame. Thank you, Carissa. That was deliciously hot. All right, next up is a dear friend who is not new to writing, but is new to the Chicago live lit and storytelling scene. I'm thrilled she's with us to make her debut. A conscious wanderer, a consistent wanderer, this writer is originally from the south suburbs of Chicago and now a resident of Bronzeville. She's participated in 2 storytelling events through Contextos, a Chicago nonprofit that prioritizes the import and value of every person's story. When not writing stories or facilitating others in the writing of their stories, she can be found putting together expert level Legos. we warmly welcome Dr. Moore to our virtual stage.
Thanks so much, Susie, for that lovely introduction. This is no distraction possible. I instinctively knew that something was wrong. The 127 text messages, shifting from frantic to fearful, to angry to frustrated, to feigned indifference and back again, like a metal ball pinging off flaps and rubber bands in an ancient pinball machine. I knew, my heart knew, with every tap of the send button, that there would be no reply. So I called the Vegas police to perform a wellness check on my longtime partner, now on a break, a la Rachel and Ross from Friends fame. The dispatcher called me back to say that all was well at 617 Falcon Lane. I was not appeased. I called the local friend next. She drove across town, pressed the doorbell, walked the property, looking in windows, and called back to me saying precisely the same thing. All was well. As a last resort, I called my former partner's father, for whom I barely ever existed. He only lived 5 minutes away from our house. He answered, surprised to hear my name spoken and my voice saying shakily, "Something's wrong. You need to get to the house and check on Pam." He hung up without a response, and I, in my childhood bedroom in Markham, Illinois, some 1,200 miles from her, from him, from an answer, was surrounded by the same faded and slightly peeling pink rose-covered wallpaper and paneling I stared at as a 5-year-old, a 15-year-old, and then my 45-year-old self. I stared and waited. She was gone. That's what my friend, who had stayed at the house waiting for Pam's father to arrive, said over the phone. And when my ears sent those words to my brain and my cerebral cortex turned them into meaning, something broke. My heart, of course, but that was to be expected. I wouldn't realize this other crack or shattering until a few hours later. I fell to my knees, muling out a cry brought forth from the depths of the Atlantic, knowing without knowing that I knew that nothing would ever be the same. My New Jersey sister, the lawyer, the organizer, jumped in and took charge, buying me a plane ticket from Chicago back to Vegas that left 2 hours and 20 minutes after that audible explosion. I grabbed a book, the title of which I cannot recall, threw my toothbrush and some underwear in my backpack and headed home. As I sat in the window seat of the Southwest flight over the wing, which I had always liked so much, I took out the book to read in hopes I would get lost in the pages, as I had done so many times before in so many places, starting in that converted doghouse lending library I created to escape the noise and chaos of our too tiny house when I was 5 and 6 and 10. I opened the cover, the smooth feeling of the cool pages underneath my fingers so familiar, yet I couldn't read beyond a paragraph. My mind simply could not hold the words or their meaning. What had always provided succor simply didn't. What had always propelled me forward, what had always kept me at least semi-upright, failed, as I had failed her. And some weak places, some breaks, simply do not heal. Words, language, books, writing could not provide comfort. There was no escaping the reality that Pamela was gone, and I was here. There's no escaping loss and grief and madness. My own? Hers? There were so many questions, and I had no answers. I wondered, what was she thinking? Not the what of what was she thinking and actually successfully killing herself, but rather, what was she thinking in those hours just before? I knew she hadn't been sleeping. I knew she was lonely. I knew she was stressed by her new cake decorating job at Freeze Bakery, a famous old school Vegas establishment. I knew she was crushed out on a girl who may or may not have been crushed out on her. So in those hours before, those hours leading up to, she probably did not sleep. She did laundry instead. Why? Why bother? I remember wandering around the house when I arrived back from Chicago, looking anew at a place that was my home, her home, seeing the space as if for the first time. The dining room table, as it almost always did, had tubes of paint on it along with her palette laid out. The bed was made, which she rarely did, except when getting fresh sheets out of the dryer. And then the dryer was a load of downy fresh clothes. But what sticks out so sorely is my opening the washing machine and staring for what seemed like eternity at a wet load of clothes. Her underwear, to be exact. Why? Until recently, I realized fairly quickly that there were no answers to be had. The note she left on a 2-inch by 3-inch post-it provided none. So with no words for succor, I hit the road in search of answers, escape, or maybe just myself. It has been 9 years and 7 months since the gone girl left. I have moved around some since in search of, well, I'm not sure exactly what I have been looking for. Quiet, space, connection, home, normalcy, love. I went from Chicago to Vegas, Vegas to Chicago, Chicago to Oklahoma City in the span of less than 6 months after that phone call, which I will never forget. And since those first 180 days, I have gone from Oklahoma City to Chicago to Vegas and now back to Chicago. I have shed jobs and commitments. I have left behind homes and connections like skin, flakes of my epidermis. I have been drawn in. I have consciously receded out. I have dived in head first, and I have sunk to the bottom on occasion, only to somehow rise. I have been on a quest of sorts, not a heroic one or even a particularly unique one, but it has been a quest nonetheless. I have been searching for a peace within that has eluded me for a lifetime. I won't lie now and suggest that the 9 years I spent with Pam were wholly peaceful and only full of positives. I won't lie because that would cheapen what was. Those 9 years were full of many complicated things, but they were always full of mutual love and friendship. Even so, I was rarely at peace, and perhaps neither was she. What I have come to realize is that movement equals change in all sorts of ways, from location to climate to friends, but one thing remains constant: you, me. I cannot have peace until my mind is ready. I have never known myself at peace. She is a stranger to me, and I was taught a long, long time ago to fear strangers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Moore. It so beautifully demonstrates the incredible power of our personal narratives for healing and connecting. This is why stories and storytelling matter so deeply. We really appreciate you being with us. Thank you for that. And this brings us to the final tale in our lineup for this year's festival. A co-host of Is This a Thing and founding member, he now calls Chicago home. While this is his first virtual storytelling show, he has done many others in the times before. I'm sorry, I'm going to say that the way he wrote it, in the before times, because that needs to be heard, in the before times. A favorite pandemic distraction over the summer has been watching English language broadcasts of professional Korean baseball. And that sounds exactly right to me for my dear friend, Jake. Please welcome back, Jake Cowan.
Thank you, Susie, for that fantastic introduction and for running us through the show and for bringing all your energy to making this happen. I appreciate you. And I'm happy to share a story with y'all tonight. Pearl Jam's Eddie Vedder leapt from the rafters of the Riverport Amphitheater in St. Louis into the arms of hundreds of adoring fans. It was the highlight of the summer. It was Lollapalooza 1992. I was 16 when I went to my first Lollapalooza in 92. The Red Hot Chili Peppers were headlining with Ministry, Ice Cube, Soundgarden, the Jesus and Mary Chain, Pearl Jam, and Lush filling out the lineup. I remember getting up that morning and carefully thinking through which t-shirt I would wear. A concert t-shirt from another band? No, that's right out. Someone at Lollapalooza might think my Billy Joel Stormfront 91 tour shirt is a little bit lame. My favorite shirt, a graphic of the planet Earth with a peace sign laid on top of it, with the caption that read, "Imagine." It's a shirt I got at the Earth Day walk. Shows I am an idealist. Maybe a girl will like it. I might also get a shirt at the concert, but only if the price is right. I spent most of my high school years working at either National Supermarket or Emo's Pizza. I worked just enough hours to buy concert tickets and t-shirts, no more, no less. Lollapalooza was the destination for everyone that I knew. The theater kids, the band kids, the math kids. There were even a few cool kids that got lost and hung out with us anyway. We went to Lollapalooza 16 people strong. It was a time when we all took off from our summer jobs, negotiated out of family events, and eschewed competing social invites. We dressed in ways that were intentional signals of our identity, and on the amphitheater's lawn, we spread out 4 full-size blankets and made a little world where we could be whoever we wanted to be. Kids who never danced, danced. Kids who never smoked, smoked. We were what I might have imagined the Goonies would have been like as teenagers. And then if a kid needed to leave the blanket sanctuary to go to the bathroom or to get food, 3 to 4 more would join them, and we would hold hands in a chain walking through the lawn. But we didn't leave the blanket much. I'm not sure if I ate or drank anything. The hours I worked created a budget for the ticket and the concert t-shirt, not food. I had my priorities. And we were there for the music. Well, but in between sets, never underestimate the creativity of bored teenagers. Feeding off the energy of an early Pearl Jam set while waiting for the Jesus and Mary chain to start, we put the smallest kid among us in the middle of a blanket. Then everyone grabbed a side of the blanket, and then we launched that kid into the air as high as we could. And after several attempts at this, we got good, and we had that kid going above the heads of the crowd. And soon, other packs of kids on the lawn were also taking up this activity. Later in the day, the lawn at the Riverport Amphitheater further descended into the Lord of the Flies and what can best be described as a trash fight. And that occurred in between the Ice Cube and the Soundgarden sets. By the time the Chili Peppers closed the show, we were exhausted. We were exuberant, and we were locked in for the final challenge, the near hour that it would take to get out of the gravel parking lot and to the Denny's back in the neighborhood, where the events of the day would be revisited, enhanced, and etched into legend. Fast forward to 2010. I find a short line for a burger from Kuma's Corner at Chowtown. It was Lollapalooza at Grant Park, the highlight of my Chicago summer. Some things about Lollapalooza have not changed. I've still seen the Red Hot Chili Peppers and Soundgarden at Lollapalooza in Grant Park. I also still get up in the morning of Lollapalooza and think through what I will wear very carefully. I investigate my inventory of cargo shorts, the wardrobe of 40-year-old men, and I assess which will be most comfortable for the day, while also having the capacity to carry extra sunscreen, a Sudafed in case my allergies kick up, and some eye drops in case my eyes get dry. And my crew for Lollapalooza is smaller now. We are not the theater, the band, or the math kids going out 16 people strong. We are 4. My brother comes up from St. Louis. He was at Lollapalooza in 1992, but with his friends. He's also a radio DJ in St. Louis now. Ray lives in Washington, D.C. and flies in for Lollapalooza. We were friends in high school and he was there in 92. Ray was in Chicago when my wife and I moved to Chicago, and he did a lot to recruit us here years ago. So Lala is his homecoming. And Pete is an elementary school teacher in Evanston with adorable twin daughters that call me Uncle Jake. My other highlight of summer in Chicago is taking the twins to Six Flags. So the 4 of us go to Lollapalooza to hang out together. We take off from work. Bad cell service usually means that it's a low-tech day, and so my brother and I document the bands we see in moleskin notebooks. Festival day is a break from everything. And instead of putting down a blanket with the intention of catapulting someone skyward from the middle of it, we find a shady tree near the stage and we sit in the grass. We talk about our families, our jobs, kids, trips, and we also talk a lot about the music. We were there for the music in 92, but honestly, most of my memories from 92 are weighted towards being with my friends than to the specifics of Pearl Jam's set list. But now we are 40-year-old guys under a shade tree that have been listening to music our entire lives. So we talk about music, with my brother's music knowledge filling the conversation. Once in reading a review of the festival, there is a line about the shade trees being where the dads go to rest at Lollapalooza. They know this by the cargo shorts convention that accumulates underneath those trees. But we are not just men of cargo shorts. Even we dance when the Postal Service plays. We also frequently encounter packs of teenagers that travel in numbers like we did in 1992. They're holding hands as they navigate the crowd. They are dressed in ways that they intentionally selected to signal something about their identity. They will probably eat at a diner later. They're also not yet fully grown, and I haven't started to shrink yet, so I actually feel pretty tall at concerts still these days. And then after the concert, after the headliners, instead of fighting through a gravel parking lot to get to Denny's, when we leave, we take the L. I text my wife, I ask her to turn on the oven and put a pizza in, and my brother and I stay up late talking about music and everything else going on in our lives. Music festivals have always been a place I go to for music, but also for the experience of connecting with important people in my life. Since 2010, this is a ritual that continues, going to Lolla or sometimes Pitchfork in Union Park. It's also one of the experiences that I miss most about 2020, and I look most forward to restarting. And I hope that when it restarts, it continues, so that in 25 years, I can tell this story again and add in a part about going to Lollapalooza 2046 with my friends from the retirement community. We'll also carefully select our clothes while making sure that our hearing aids and other medical wear are fully charged or have fresh batteries. And when we get to the festival, we will link arms and dance through the crowd like the teenagers we once were. Thank you.
Awesome, Jake. Recalling Lollapalooza and all the things we miss actually feels pretty good. Even the cargo shorts convention under the trees. Thanks for bringing us back and helping us look ahead, far ahead. All right, y'all. That's it for Is This a Thing at the 2020 Fillet of Solo Festival. We want to give a huge shout out and thank you to our co-host, Damian Rashevsky, for running the behind the scenes magic for this virtual show, just as he always did at O'Shaughnessy's, where we normally do our show live. Damian makes
Hey, Damian.
Hey, Damian. Damian always makes sure we are both heard and seen. Pretty important stuff for sharing stories. Thank you, Damian. So while we are together apart, as the saying goes, the amazing folks at Lifeline Theater have worked their magic to make us feel a part of something bigger than ourselves, which is why we love this Chicago storytelling community in all its forms, on stages, in the back of an Irish pub, and even in these digital spaces. This time next year, I hope we'll be seeing you live and in person at Fillet of Solo 2022. Thank you.